All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. It's good to see you all again and continue our talks about leadership and what it means for us in our music programs. And today we're going to talk a little about excellence, which is something that it's a word we use a lot when we talk about education and when we talk about music and when we talk about program building and kind of just how we judge ourselves and we judge each other. So today we're going to talk about what that actually means to us. And I know that we have a lot of thoughts about that. And so I'm going to pass it first to Jared, to Mr. Cassidy, if you can talk to us a little bit about what does excellence mean to you?
Oh my goodness. So I think I have a different perspective as I've only been in Massachusetts just a few years. And granted, I'm over the border in New Hampshire for most of my career, if you will. But coming here to Massachusetts has been incredible. Working down in Boston, working with Lexington Public Schools, hearing ensembles perform from Belmont and other districts, it's pretty incredible to see the level of musical excellence that that exists in our programs. And maybe start thinking about like my own experience as a student when I was in high school versus when I first started my career. I think everybody wants to play high quality literature and play like these amazing composers and all this stuff. And you think about the band directors and band programs that like are recognized at all nationals and all these festivals and whatnot. What I realized over time, I think, is that excellence, like the actual output of the kind of music you're making, is kind of a byproduct, if you will. Excellence for me really is not necessarily being perfect. It's not about getting accolades and awards. It's not about, excellence instead is really, really focused on just holding ourselves to high standards. And that's not just musically. It's about the way you come into the classroom. It's about supporting the culture. It's about the investment of relationships with each other. Those are the most high quality and most excellent aspects, I think, of an ensemble, is when the focus is on each other. The focus is on the common goals and beliefs within the culture that have been created and that have been followed by every member. And I think that when it comes to excellence, getting straight A's and getting a perfect score on SATs, that's great. That shows your aptitude, I guess, your achievement in that aspect. But is that excellence? I don't know. I think that when it comes to me thinking about excellence, whether it be music or not, to be an excellent human being, perhaps, like what are we contributing to each other, to society in the most positive and most influential in a good way possible. And I think that excellence, it's not about like being perfect. I think so myself coming into Lexington Public Schools where music is performed at such a high level, that's wonderful. I think that's beautiful and we should still maintain those high standards, but not at the sacrifice of being human about it and approaching it in a way that's collaborative and focused on relationships and focused on the experience of that music making.
That's great. I know that's something you and I have talked about a lot in our parallel work in Belmont and Lexington is how do we maintain high standards, but also make sure that the experience that we're having is meaningful and real. So it's great to hear you talk about that. I'll ask Allie now. Ms. Lacasse, how do you define excellence?
Well, I think for me, when I think of excellence and what leads to it, the other E word that comes up is effort. And having a passionate effort on a daily basis is going to lead to excellence. It might take longer for some ensembles than others. And there are many different factors that lead into that. But I think that having pride in that process and pride in walking into a room and just saying, I had the worst day, but I'm going to leave that at the door because everybody else here, we said it in our last segment, everybody else here deserves their best. It's not about me, right? And I think that music is a way for us to kind of easily be able to shut that door, the negative experiences that happen to our lives, big or small, on a daily basis. So I really do think that it's how we think about the process and not just think about the trophies and the accolades and the newspaper headlines. Those are great. And there's pride in that. And we should be taking pride in that too. That's always something to celebrate. But I like to celebrate the little victories that happen on a daily basis in the rehearsal room. And sometimes those little victories aren't even known to each other. Like I could have a rehearsal with 60 people in the room. 30 of them could have had, a bunch of clams and stuff that I might not even have heard, but others may have like finally played through one passage that they never had before, and I think the effort is also about the time you take for yourself outside of the rehearsal room, like what you do in nurturing the part that you have to play, how you think about it, how much listening we do as musicians and how much talking about the music and practicing with each other, like fellow musicians, is super important. And I know I'm talking a lot about like the nitty gritty, like the technical aspects of this, but it's true for me that, you know, a great practice session could be just sitting with your headphones for an hour, just listening and finding joy in that, and having that as your end goal. Like that example of the greatest recording of Blue Shades, like that's what we want to sound like. Walking into the band room the next day and having, you know, that is your goal. And whether or not you meet it is, I mean, that's a whole other story. But walking in with a truly passionate effort to just be your best and perform for each other. That's what I think excellence is.
Right. And some of that too that you're describing is sort of, it's about establishing a benchmark, right? Like you do that listening not because you expect to sound like the North Texas Wind Ensemble playing Blue Shades when you're in a high school band room, but you need to establish that bar of expectations, or the, you know, of excellence that you then strive to reach, and then you fall somewhere on that spectrum, and then it's for you to judge, like, okay, was that excellent? For me, was that excellent? Justin, what do you think about excellence?
Well, I sort of got hit in the face with excellence, if you will, when I first joined the faculty at Lexington High School, because the reputation for the Lexington music department was one of excellence. And I remembered being in high school and always hearing about how great that band was, and actually hearing how great that band was. And then arriving and, you know, being 10 years older than that, but still being totally floored by what I was hearing, by what an incredibly high level the musicians were playing at. So I think that presented one side of the concept of excellence. I think something that I've really appreciated about what's been said so far has been the idea of broadening that category of excellence, because I believe that if it's limited simply to the level of performance, then a lot of people are justified in setting it up as being mutually exclusive from joy or from a positive culture. The idea that excellence can actually be the enemy sometimes, where if we're working so hard to be the very best that we can be, that therefore we are not still loving each other and respecting each other and doing all these other things, and that we can be excellent at other things besides just playing music really well. So I think it's really important to take a broader definition of excellence when we talk about why it's important. But at the same time, never losing the importance of the value of doing what you do well, which Ali, I think you mentioned too. It's still important to sound great, because one of my great mentors taught me that, you know, it's the sort of thing where, you know, if everyone comes out of a performance knowing it could have been better, then it kind of brings the culture down a little bit. If you feel like, I know we're capable of higher than that, we have a higher bar than that and we didn't quite hit it. So I do think, you know, playing music at an excellent level is a critical component to a good community culture. But I think you've got to broaden, as you guys said, I think you've got to broaden that definition of excellence to so much more than just the level at which you're performing.
Yeah, so Justin, I agree with you. If we're using the Boston Symphony Orchestra as the benchmark of excellence, then it's going to be really hard for any of us in our musical lives to attain excellence, because it's, you know, we're talking about the top 0.5% of musicians in the world, right? In this group, and you know, I liken it often to athletics. Like I really like to play basketball. And I feel like, you know, for my life, I've been like an okay basketball player at times, especially when I was younger. But now, you know, here I am, a 43-year-old, 5'6" guy that still likes to play basketball. I'm not going to give up just because, you know, I could be better. Like LeBron James is way better at basketball than I am. So if I'm going to set that as the benchmark, then I might as well throw my sneakers in the garbage and never touch a basketball again. And it's exactly the same in music, right? Like just because the player sitting next to you is an all-state level player who, you know, is the greatest high school trumpet player that ever lived, right? That doesn't mean that you give up just because, you know, that the person next to you might be better. You can be excellent within the parameters. Like you look at where you started and where you're going to end up, and then judge that whole journey and decide whether it was excellent or not. So Matthew, how about you? Where do you fall on the excellence conversation?
Well, I've just so enjoyed hearing all these different perspectives, and it's really invigorating. I was thinking that the striving for excellence needs to come from someplace, and it can be either externally motivated or it can be intrinsically motivated. I can't remember a time where I didn't love music. You know, from like, I remember like 4 years old and 5 years old, just like singing my heart out and starting to write words to songs when I was 5 years old. And even though the first song I ever wrote was, I would like to be a gardener, right? Like, it's like that, yeah, and they were hilarious, right? And my first instrument was a tennis racket, right? And then I started piano in second grade. And I was actually also in second grade when I first decided I wanted to be a saxophonist. I heard the sixth grade saxophonist play jazz and just rocked my world. And so for me, excellence has come from a place of passion, a place of love. Like really, like I love music. And so I want to be as good as I possibly can. And I think that's really important. It's like, what's driving you? And that's fine. It's going to be different for every person. For some people, your motivation drive comes because you care about everybody sitting around you and you want to bring your best for them. And that's awesome, right? For others, it might be like that you want to sit in the Boston Symphony someday, right? That's a goal of yours. And so you're always aiming higher. But I think you need to get in touch with your why, your sense of purpose of why do I want to be excellent? And it shouldn't be like a top-down thing. And it's not about the grade. It's about what excites you, what ignites you within. And for me, it's I want to sound the best I can because I love the sound of the saxophone. And I want to play the music at the highest level I possibly can. But I'll tell you what, it's been a trajectory that hasn't always looked like this. I wish I could tell you that commitment, dedication, and perseverance is always moving, but life isn't like that, right? There's some struggles. And that's okay. And as Ali said, there might be some clams in rehearsal. And I remember at a young age, I really struggled with even like tapping my foot in tempo with the metronome, right? I was a rhythm tapper. So it was like, that was In the Mood by Glenn Miller, by the way. That's what my foot would have looked like when I was a really young player. So I worked really hard at it. And that's an important thing to remember is that wherever you are, if you put in the daily practice and ask, your teacher for different strategies, you will find a way forward. And of course, I'm talking about this idea of growth mindset, right? And this idea that wherever you're at, I know that you can grow and get better. So that's a teacher having a belief in you or a student believing in you. And that's so important. It comes from that place of self-belief. But it's got to come from within. And then that drives you. That's why you take your instrument home every day and you're going to open the case and get it out and just begin. And so much of the challenge is getting the instrument out, right? Once you get the instrument out, it's like, oh yeah, I'm home. I love this, right? And it's like, if it comes from a place of love or your motivation is something else, that's okay, but it drives you forward and it's about stepping stones. I call it stepping stones of success. So celebrate the daily successes. It's not always just about the performance. Although, gosh, isn't it great when you have those performances and everybody just feels like, I gave it my all. That's the moment, right? That's like the tears afterwards. It's like all invested in. That's excellence. But excellence can also be in a daily practice session. It can be a moment in rehearsal where maybe, have you had those rehearsals where like you get like goosebumps, right? Like this chills and you're like, wow, that is amazing. And to me, that's why we do it. Why we do it. That feeling you get inside that only music can express. And that's why I think excellence is worth aiming for and aspiring for.
And how lucky are we that that's what we get to do every day, or in normal times, that's what we get to do every day. And we can't wait to get back and do it again. All right, great. Thank you everyone for your thoughts, and we'll see you next time.